Okay, so we're going to start with the questions. Now, I made a decision to not come up with the questions myself. I want them to be organic to our region. I feel that every single region has its own unique challenges, their own priorities that are meaningful for them and that impact their lives. So I found different people that I think would ask a variety of questions that would be reflective of values that are important in our region. And some of the issues I think are statewide of importance, and some are specifically important probably to a lot of the folks in our region. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to ask when you come up, I'm going to give you a microphone. You can either do it right there from the floor or come up. I'll leave it up to you. And I'm going to start today with Timothy Maher, who is the incoming chairman of the Ontario County Scope. Where did he go? There we go. Okay, excellent. So they should all be up front. Let's see, is this connected here? Oh, you may have to actually come up. You're going to have to actually come around. I apologize. I didn't realize that there's a little connection. Oh, actually, I could have given it to you, but you might as well.
Okay. Thank you, Tricia. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming this morning. As Tricia said, I'm the incoming chairman for the Ontario County Scope. It's a two-part question. And the first part is, what is your stance on the SAFE Act? And when elected, will you repeal all or part of the SAFE Act? And if so, what time period will you propose your bill?
So.
Yep. We'll start from that end and go with that.
Again, as I mentioned in my presentation, I think this was a knee-jerk reaction the governor had to a very horrendous situation. I believe that the SAFE Act needs to be repealed. Now, having said that, I also believe that we need to figure out, and we had some discussions earlier, how we're going to deal with these horrific situations that have occurred over the last 20 years here in this country. We need not to take the guns away from good people. We need to figure out how to take the guns away from the bad people. And I don't have all the answers, but I'm looking forward to, number one, repealing the SAFE Act and putting together a group of people who have a lot more expertise in this subject than I do to figure out how we're going to solve the problems that we're confronting today in our schools and in our society. Again, I don't have all the answers, but I'm looking forward to putting together a group of experts that can help advise me as to what the best rules and regulations will be to help deal with the problems that we're confronting now that we've never had to deal with before as a society.
Thank you.
I agree with Joel that the SAFE Act needs to be repealed, but it has to be repealed, in a way where we are protecting our Second Amendment rights while at the same time ensuring the safety of our citizens. Government's most important role is to ensure the safety of its citizens. And we need to take what I call a holistic approach to this. It's imperative that we look at what's going on, particularly with all the school shootings, and say, yes, guns are a problem, but mental health is also a problem. What's going on with graduation rates that are falling is also a problem. What's going on with expulsion of kids from school is also a problem. And so taking a holistic approach is imperative, so we're actually addressing what's happening at the grassroots. I've been involved at the grassroots throughout my career. I started and ran a homeless shelter in Harlem. I started and ran and was on the board of a drug abuse clinic. And having a grassroots approach is imperative to solving these problems that we face.
Thank you.
Well, I voted against the SAFE Act when it was first proposed and advocated strongly against it. Unfortunately, our governor was able to piece off a few people and get the bill passed. And most of those people are no longer in the Senate. I think all of them are no longer in the Senate because they pay the price, which they should have paid for a ridiculous vote. Secondly, that's all right. Secondly, with respect to this, now is going to be a real difficult time for everybody with this last shooting. I mean, it's already started, and we got to ban guns completely. The fact of the matter is, this might sound kind of hokey to everybody except Jason. and that is we keep God out of the schools, and these things keep happening, and you wonder, what's going on? This isn't just because one kid goes crazy and does some horrible act. This is because our society is falling apart, and people are doing crazy things. So you got to change more than just who has a gun. You got to be in a situation to demand responsibility, to demand kids that get discipline in the schools, and to follow up on those kids that have the signs that could cause a problem in the future. We now learn that the FBI had a tip on this and didn't follow up the tip. Now, you can't stop everything, but it's got to be, as Joe said, a holistic approach. Now, under the law, this is unbelievable. Now, under the law, if you go to the doctors and have some little breakdown or something, now what happens is the presumption is turned around. You're presumed to be crazy, and the gun's taken away immediately. So the whole situation with guns has to be reversed so that lawful citizens maintain those guns, and the people that shouldn't have them should not get them, period.
Thank you. Thank you, folks. Thanks, Tricia.
Thank you. Bonnie Ross. Bonnie Ross will be asking 2 questions today. She has 2 roles that she's currently serving in and has served in. She is a member of the Board of Directors. You can just come around this way, Bonnie. She's a member of the Board of Directors for Clifton Springs Hospital, and she's also the former Executive Director of the Partnership of Ontario County. And she has 2 separate questions.
Okay, thank you, Tricia. Thank you, gentlemen, for being here, and thank all of you for being here this morning. I do have 2 questions, and this comes from my role as a board member at Clifton Springs Hospital. And currently, our regional hospitals are having trouble recruiting psychiatrists, and this is happening particularly in the rural area. The need is increasing based on substance abuse and the opioid epidemic, and increasing mental health issues, which we've mentioned this morning and certainly witnessed in Florida this week. What would you do as governor to help our hospitals recruit the needed psychiatrists and mental health providers to our communities to meet this critical need?
Well, I'll start with this. Thank you, Bonnie, for that question and putting it in the context of the growing need and the growing crisis that we have with the opioid crisis in particular. As governor, I would use my status as governor not only to enact legislation and to work with Albany insiders, but also, to use that status as a bully pulpit to bring important attention to issues like this. And coming to Ontario County and meeting with officials at the hospital and bringing the kind of attention that is needed to having people come and serve in an area. And it has to be put in the context of there are greater problems in this area and upstate New York, such as the economic development and the loss of population. We know under Andrew Cuomo, over 1 million people have left the state of New York during his tenure. And so the inability to recruit has to do with this governor's failure to set the right kind of climate that's attractive. The overtaxation, overspending, overregulation that has driven people out of the state. So yes, using the bully pulpit, but also talking about the larger issues of bringing people and keeping them here.
Yes, it's pretty obvious. You're not going to have psychiatrists, you're not going to have doctors, lawyers, you're not going to have anybody. Maybe it's good not to have the lawyers, but you're going, every profession, they're leaving. They're leaving. Why come to upstate New York when you've got to pay half of your salary to taxes and you can't make a good living for your family? So that's number one, and I'm sure we'll talk about the economics as well. Secondly, there's stories about how money is wasted. In order to attract good doctors, you got to be able to pay them. And in order to pay them, the hospital has to be in the black. And unfortunately, many hospitals are in trouble. Auburn Hospital, I don't know how many meetings I've gone to try to help the funding to go to Auburn to keep them strong. And fortunately, it's helped substantially. But as far as the funding, several years ago, there was a big movement by the union employees in Brooklyn Hospital. And that hospital was going under. Well, David Patterson at the time decided at all costs, because of the political reasons, that hospital has to stay open. They had to be acquired by another hospital downstate. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year are still being paid there, redirecting resources to hospitals that need the funding and are successful and can be more successful at what's happened. Also, doctors across New York State, we've got to give incentives to kids getting out of medical school to stay in the vicinity of the lowest served communities, and that would help as well.
Yes, healthcare is obviously a huge challenge for us nationally. It's obviously a very large challenge for us here in New York State. It's one of the second largest expenditures in the state budget is healthcare. But in regards to your specific question, hospitals in New York State are challenged financially. We all know that. In Western New York, we have 3 hospital systems: a Catholic Health, a county medical center, and a private hospital system. I was in the forefront of getting consolidations and mergers to take place to right-size the healthcare system, because one of the reasons why we're losing doctors and young students from our universities who are in the medical field is because there's better opportunities. So once we figure out how to right-size the hospital system, then we'll have a chance of attracting specialists to our area. We'll have a chance of keeping our young, talented residents who we're training to ship out to other communities to provide their skill set. So it's about right-sizing first. And we did that in Erie County. The Erie County Medical Center, which was under the jurisdiction of the county government at the time, when I took over, they had about a $40 million operating deficit. Every year, the county taxpayers had to put $40 million in to make the hospital profitable. I changed the board. We brought new people in. That hospital now is providing positive cash flow after about 8 years of changing the governance structure and right-sizing the delivery system so that the hospitals aren't competing against each other in Erie County. They're working with each other to provide centers of excellence. And that's what we can do throughout the entire state of New York.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, I have a second question, and this stems from my role not only at the